Let's find out more about Russia's global relations and its legacy from World War II. Joining us now from London is Alexander Nekrassov. He's a former advisor to the Kremlin on political and defense matters. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the show.
Pleasure.
Alexander, is it fair to say the Europeans, Russia and China face more common threats and concerns now than any time since World War II?
Well, when we talk about common dangers, common enemies, I think that at the moment we have a situation when instability is spreading throughout whole regions. We saw this, the situation deteriorate in the Middle East, and now it has spread further, down to in Africa, and it actually reached Europe. Ukraine at the moment has its civil war going on, although we have a temporary peace ceasefire, we actually have fighting continuing there. I think it's a very dangerous time. I think that there is a risk of a big war actually erupting in Europe, and I think that the main problem, the main reason why we have such an unstable situation is that the mechanisms which are used to resolve crises and conflicts does not work. The UN is not effective. Other regional organizations are not effective. So the challenge before most of the nations and political leaders is to create a new security network, a new organization, probably based not in America anymore, probably based somewhere in Asia, maybe even in Beijing, because it has to move away from America. America has too much dominance on the UN, and this dominance creates conflict.
Alexander, some people would say, though, that there is cooperation taking place. Talk about some of the cooperation behind the scenes. There's other interests. For example, the Iran nuclear talks, there's been some cooperation there. Climate change, fighting global terror. Want to get your reaction to that.
Well, first of all, the important thing to understand is that Russia has not been isolated to an extent that many commentators are saying. Russia continues to have its relations with Europe. Russia continues to have relations with America, business and political. Let's not forget that Russia was helping America to move out equipment and troops from Afghanistan, and it was Russian territory that was used by Americans. So people should not forget about this. Of course, there are political tensions, but behind the scenes, yes, you mentioned, for example, the talks in Iran. Without Russia's involvement, these talks would have collapsed. Without Russia's involvement, and China's as well, by the way, the Syrian situation would have deteriorated to an extent where we would have had probably an all-out war and involvement of other countries as well. I think that, Russia and China actually have a sort of a comforting effect on world affairs, because without their resistance to certain aggressive tendencies of some nations, we probably would have had many more conflicts, not just in Ukraine, not just in Syria, but I think many more other regions. So I think this is very important for the two nations, and actually, the Russians treasure the fact that President Xi found the time to come to Moscow for the celebrations, that the talks between him and President Putin were very successful, extremely successful. I think about more than 30 contracts were signed. And I think this probably gives us hope that Russia and China together can influence events to a much bigger degree across the world. And I think this is a very positive sign.
And that being said, looking ahead to the big celebrations happening there in Moscow this weekend, what are you looking forward to the most? It's not just China and Russia that will be there tomorrow. Other world leaders will be attending as well.
Well, obviously, the unfortunate thing is that some political leaders, Western leaders, decided to use the celebration of the 17th anniversary of the ending of World War II for political reasons, political games. And this, of course, upsets some people, although, of course, the Russians tend to ignore such things, but it's still a problem. The important thing about the parade tomorrow, I think, which needs to be mentioned, is that a lot of Western commentators and foreign commentators as well tend to treat this military parade as some, sign of force, some muscle flexing, a sort of aggression which Russia demonstrates. No, it's not. These parades have been going on for decades. This is not a military exercise. This is a day of remembrance of the heroic deeds of the people who inflicted damage on Nazi Germany and who, basically contributed to the victory against Nazi Germany. And I think this is a very important point, because some people do forget that and start saying, well, the Russian government is demonstrating new weapons. It's probably a message to the West. Beware, we have new equipment and we have new weapons. Yes, of course. The weapons are better, they're new, they're more effective, but this is not the real message. The real message is we remember what happened 70 years ago on this occasion. We have lost 27 million people. 27 million. And I think the most important message that should come from the Red Square tomorrow is that people remember war is dangerous, war kills. Please do everything possible to stop and prevent such wars.